Today is Saturday, December 2nd, 2023. A very damp and foggy day, but good for plants. This is a few days after a strong freeze. We had lows in the 20s during the week, and I had a thermometer among these plants that recorded a 23-degree temperature Fahrenheit during the middle of the week. And so I know from experience you should wait a few days after a freeze event to examine your plants and assess how they really handled it. I often keep a few seedlings beside my nursery varieties just as a control measure so that I truly understand whether there is cold hardiness being exhibited here. No doubt these seedlings came out the worse than my various nursery varieties. All of these are plants that I bought in the spring. This is the Stewart, that is the Bacon, this is the Poncho, and back in the corner is the Mexicola. And what's interesting here is that I did not quite get the results that I expected. This Stewart does exhibit cold hardy properties, but I will admit 23 degrees is right about the point where it seems to begin suffering. So I can tell these leaves are beginning to wilt. There's speckling of brown appearing. Not all of the tree was damaged. I see some limbs down here that look okay, but notice how immediately adjacent to this Bacon I have some damaged leaves, and the Bacon came out okay. In starting this experiment, I was thinking the Bacon would be the least cold hardy of my four here, but it's interesting how well it did. And this Poncho tree appears to have practically no damage at all. The Mexicola, I'll get close to this. This tree is actually in flower, and that's the reason I put it back here in the corner. I wanted to give it the best chance. So I am leaning towards thinking this Stewart tree is perhaps one to remove from consideration from ever planting in the ground. Perhaps these dark leaves reveal something of a Fuerte-like heritage. I wouldn't knock the tree too much. I do think that from a Southern California perspective it's cold hardy, but for me, where I'm really trying to scratch for every inch of cold hardiness possible, it's probably going to be an ornamental tree in a pot for me. So from among these three, I may still select one to plant later. This is the south side of my house, and I'll offer a few more observations from here. Deep in the corner, again, I left one small avocado as a control, and I know from past experiences when I see this dark staining moving down through the veins, that is a leaf that is marginal but could survive. But any leaves that have simply turned brown, they're going to fall off. So this is a plant that I probably won't keep outside in the cold anymore. I'm going to give it a chance to recover. This is my only 2021 plant. Here is my variegated kumquat, and what's interesting is I remember when it was the morning of the coldest during the week, this tree was wilting, and I thought, well, maybe I overdid it, but it sprang back. So apparently kumquats are a little more cold hardy than avocados are. And here are some leftover collards. Same thing, 20 degrees, which was the temperature I found on my thermometer here, froze these leaves but didn't destroy the collard plants, which is not what I would have thought. I always have thought of collards as, a southern variety vegetable. So, and then looking at these other two kumquat trees, I've been eating the fruit quickly, so that's why there's not much left. But I can tell you that 20-degree morning, these fruits were frozen solid. They were essentially popsicles. So from what I read, oranges are ruined in the freeze, but kumquats, no. They can take a freeze and they'll stay on the tree and they don't turn mushy. They're still good. The freeze did introduce a little bit of waviness around the edges of these leaves, maybe some yellowing, but not any serious harm. I don't see anything turning black and getting ready to fall off here, so I'm pretty satisfied with how the kumquats did. I think it's worth mentioning again that the reason the lila tree is way out there is I was deliberately leaving space to perhaps put another tree beside it, or even another tree, because I sense the frost line is just outside of the edge of the planting. So warm air does still manage to keep the ground frost free. I wouldn't say that's a very large layer. It only comes up a few feet, and then the air is certainly cold. But nevertheless, that may be the amount of protection you need in an extreme night, just to keep the root balls alive. And so let's take a look at this lila. I did have this covered, and I had lights strung in it, but I've gone ahead and removed the lights. I don't think I'll need them for a few more weeks, and I'll put them back later in December or January. There's a little bit of damage in some of these emerging leaves, probably because the cover was touching it here, but generally I see good results here. I even still have flowers and new growth. So this lila handled a 20-degree night with protection, and that is a typical January night in my opinion. So we'll see. I'll continue to protect this tree and hopefully continue to grow it out. Maybe I'll get some fruits on here, and we'll see how the protection works for a fruiting tree during the winter.